how was it like weren't you being like a lot of people, especially in the United States, like bullied and stuff like that, because of like they judge people in the United States. So.
Yeah, I think so. Maybe how did I deal with it? Yeah. Okay. I think this is a good question. And it's something I have struggled with throughout my life, even in India. I mean, I was bullied there. In fact, it was probably, well, okay. It is a difficult question. I think the only thing that's helped me is standing up for myself. And I think that's both in thought and in word and in action. I think that when somebody's making fun of you, it's usually because you are not the same in some way. It's usually because there's something about you that's different than them, and they are thrown off by the lack of uniformity. In other words, they feel uncomfortable because you're different. That's one of the major reasons, at least in my experience. So what I mean by stand up for yourself, I mean understand what it is that you feel and you believe in, and what it is about you that's different that they're making fun of. So first of all, in your thinking, you shouldn't let what they're saying about you affect how you feel about yourself. Because you should feel in your heart, maybe I'll just give an example how they would bully me in India. So I'm white and I'm American. There was a president at the time that was not very popular in most of the rest of the world. And so there are a number of reasons. The fact of the matter is, I'm American and I'm white. And I love those two things about myself. And I wouldn't change those two things. And so the key for me is understanding within myself that, okay, this is the way I am. I accept myself for who I am. And who I am in this way is wonderful, is beautiful, and is the way that Swami has enabled me to exist. And so you should be strong in your thought that I am who I am, and that's good. And then the second thing is if somebody's getting in a verbal argument with them, just let them be. Just let them be. You know, and if they're saying something insulting, you can stand up for yourself with your words, say, you know, I find that hurtful. I find that hurtful, and I'm proud of the way I am. And I'm not afraid of who you are or what you're saying to me. That's how I deal with it. So, yeah.
Is it weird being spiritual? Like, I mean, I know people who are religious, right, who are my age. Like, their parents force them to go to church every week, so they are, by definition, religious. But is it weird being spiritual of your own accord and, like, being in high school and stuff? Like, does that make sense? Am I being...
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, when I was in high school, it was weird, and it was difficult for me, but as I went through college, I kind of got it. It's a similar answer to the same question. I mean, a similar answer to a different question. For me, my faith is something that is not something that somebody has told me to have. Yes, people have told me to have it, but at this point, it's a choice. And that's the difference for me, is that I choose to love Swami, and I choose to have him in my life. And I'm aware of that distinction, is that, you know, I choose to believe in his power and his love. And so, and I feel that that choice makes my life richer. So, again, it's a question of embracing that part of yourself. Did that answer it? Sort of?
Yeah.
Okay. Other questions? Yeah.
This is on a totally different note, but this is related to music. So I know only in the last few years India has become very exposed to like westernized music.
Mm-hmm.
They've been always like self-cultured, self-dependent. And so when you were learning like the violin or like the cello when you were growing up, and you came to the United States, how did you overcome that change in like the music and like lifestyle that they have, the change?
Okay, good question. I think I'll just share a little bit of my history with the cello. I started when I was 5 here, and then I basically stopped for 7 years while I was in India. I did some singing in India. I did the chanting, and that was more my musical education there. But my parents are both Western classical musicians, so I was exposed to a lot of this kind of music here before I went there, and when I was there, I listened to it as well whenever I was home. And so coming back here was more kind of getting back to my music, and I'm not so. And then the question about the mixture, things getting mixed, is that?
Yeah, kind of.
Okay, so you're asking what I think about the mixture, or how it affected me?
I know people who came here and they play different instruments and they're like in the band, and like when they play they have like this new ring to it that like musicians don't like at all, and it really affects them.
Huh,
So
weird. Yeah, I know what you're talking about. I feel that maybe it's a connection with Swami, but I also think the way that music is in India, it's a devotional practice. It's singing from the heart. Also, it's learned by listening and repeating. It's not learned by looking at something on a page and doing it. It's a sound to sound kind of translation, not a sight to sound sort of thing. And I think it's also a heart to sound rather than a mind to sound in a lot of ways. And I think that gives Indian kids who've been exposed to Indian music a special quality in the music, which is in fact an advantage, in my opinion. Yeah.
How long has it been since the last time you saw Swami?
It's been 2000, almost 6 years. Yeah.
I'm quite curious to know, when you were in the room at the White House, what was your experience like? Were you in the moment like kind of like nervous, or did you feel like all out to Swami during that moment?
That moment was all out to Swami. That moment I was not, I just figured the way everything came together there, it had a very distinct feeling that it was Swami pulling the strings, and so I just kind of just went up there and said, I'm not sure what's coming out. I hope it's correct. Yeah. Any questions? Yeah.
So in your daily life now, how do you incorporate your spirituality to your daily life?
Yeah.
How did you do it when you were a student? Because with all the doubts that most of us have when we're younger, how did you incorporate that into your life then and now?
When I was a student in India and now.
Even a student here.
Even a student here. Okay, well, I think it's important, for me it was important when I was younger to have it be kind of a part of my life that I took for granted, and that wasn't something that I had to make a choice about, because otherwise, it's much easier to make a choice to go out and play or do something else or go see a friend than to spend time with spirituality, because it can be not the most stimulating at all times. As a student now, it's kind of a meditation in the morning when I get up, just a short connection, praying to Swami. I feel like I try and stay in contact with Swami throughout the day, just talking with him. And that's just a habit that I have over many years. And then I also, for me, music is a spiritual practice for me. And it's how I see myself communicating Swami's love to the world, even if the world doesn't know that I'm communicating Swami's love. So it's kind of my, especially to audiences that aren't Psy audiences, then it's like, I feel like my goal is to do everything I can to get better on the instrument, but also continue connecting with Swami, continue deepening the connection, and connecting that with the music so that when I play, it's about Swami and love and universality and all that good stuff, not about me, and then that, and hopefully that connects people who listen to me with something deeper inside of them, whether they know that I'm thinking about Swami, that's not necessarily important. But that's my music, I view as kind of a spiritual practice. Yeah.
You can go ahead.
I just was curious, just real quick, how did you end up at the White House and have that honor, and how did that happen?
We know some Sai families on the East Coast, and one of them is a member of an organization called Hindu Seva Organization, and one of their, I think their founding member was part of the Obama administration at some point, or worked closely with him or the Obama administration on something. And so she got this conference, which is a Hindu American Seva organization. It was a conference on bringing Seva into the communities, serving the communities, and also defining the identity of Indians living in America as both Indians but also Americans, which is probably why it was at the White House, to encourage that feeling. It was mostly businessmen and those sort of people gathered there in the conference room. And then he mentioned that my brother and I chant the Vedam, and so then we were invited to go. So yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So I have a comment and a question too.
Yeah.
So the comment is, you said that you were born in 93,
Yeah.
which makes you 22.
Yeah.
So the answers and the speech that you gave is not from a 22 years old soul. It looks like it's a soul that has matured through many, many lives. So and the question that follows is, what do you have for the younger kids who has never seen Swami in their life so far, and how do you think they would be able to connect with Swami? You had those experiences with Swami, but what about kids who are of this generation, who haven't seen Swami? All they know is what their parents have said so far. Do you have anything for them?
Yeah. I think for me, the strongest impression, as I was mentioning earlier in my speech, is the sound and the feeling impressions. And I feel like those impressions are present even in the Sai Center. Swami's love comes through in the bhajans. Swami's love comes through in the prayers. And these are things that, the feelings that you have when Swami's love is here, those are the feelings that make the most powerful impression. Whether it's sitting in front of Swami and you have Swami's love there, or if it's here and you have Swami's love, it's that feeling that you have of connection and of fullness inside that I think is most important to remember, so that later on in life, when you move away, when you start questioning things, when things get difficult, then you have that feeling to come back to. You have something to do to connect back with Swami. That's what I would say.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That should come from internally from the kids themselves.
Can
You
I
need
also-
not, you need not be there, but still if they develop their own,
Yeah,
it will stay a part of them.
yeah, it should stay a part of them, but I think the only way that it can do that is if they're exposed to it enough. So it's a
May I
question of
also
exposure.
add to that? So, when we are staying this farther away, we strongly feel that we are not seeing Swami's presence, but a constant exposure to his voice, his speeches, which is abundantly available for us. And, his bhajans are available. Constant exposure to that voice and listening to his speeches would still keep intact with him, and his presence is still live with us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. I think it's finding something that you can personally, something that you remember, and then you feel that feeling. So that feeling of, like for me, I hear Swami's, the thought of Swami's voice is something that triggers that feeling in me. Sorry, yeah.
So just a question of, a very personal question that maybe for you.
Uh-huh.
How do you keep in touch with the Vedam chanting? Do you do it every day? What does the day in your life look like? You get up at 5 a.m. and do chanting?
No.
So just an average day in your life.
Yeah, well, I wish I could say that I chant it every day, and I should. I really should. But to be honest, it's not an everyday thing. But I should do it every day, and so should everybody else. Do it every day. It looks like a student's life. I get up in the morning at, 7 or 7:30, and I take a shower, I eat breakfast, I do some just quick praying with Swami. I go to school. I am at school from 9 till anywhere from 5 to 10 at night, and then I come home and I read a little bit or eat some food, talk with my family, and then I go to bed. So
that sounds great. So how do you keep in touch with the Vedas so that you don't lose those skills?
yeah, well, I do chant on a regular basis. Yeah, I have to make sure that I'm doing it enough. So it's not every day, but it is regular. Yeah, so it definitely needs to be. And for me, it was a part of my life, for hours of the day for 7 years. So it's like, for me, it comes back easily. But I think when you're learning it especially, it needs to be a disciplined daily occurrence so that you can learn the skills and maintain them. Yeah.
Like these young kids, like not these usual young kids, are you also affected by the social media, like the cell phone, internet, and laptops and all that? Are you?
I try to avoid I try to avoid myself. I don't like communicating on that level. I don't feel it's communicating. So I use it because it's how my generation talks and connects with people. It's essential to use it and to understand how it works. And I use Facebook to stay in touch with old friends that I don't see anymore. But I stay pretty quiet and I don't like texting. I prefer to speak face to face with someone. Yeah.
I'm just curious. You talked about your feeling loneliness,
Uh-huh.
and now you're in the United States. Do you feel like you don't belong there or here, neither?
Yeah.
What's your feeling?
Well, I do feel that way, or I did for a long time, but I think the feeling of belonging didn't become necessarily important anymore. I think I realized that like the people who I was trying to belong to, I didn't really want to belong to, I didn't want to be part of some American social group. It just didn't make me feel good. And I tried, but it doesn't make me feel good. And I have friends, I have close friends, I hang out with people, I have a social life. But I think, I definitely don't feel like I belong in either place, necessarily. But I do feel like, we're all humans, and at any given time we can all connect on some level. So, I think the social belongingness is something that is not necessarily is not relevant all the time. And you can move past that barrier once, at least for me, I can move past it once I accept myself that, okay, I'm not this way. Is this important to me? Maybe I feel awkward, which I do a lot. Okay, I feel awkward. I accept myself. It's okay. I feel awkward, and then I just move on. Yeah.
So like SSC, like a lot of the concepts that we is like we are not, everyone around us is not. For you, is it just through music, or do you believe like in that sense of loneliness, do you go to God and say, I am God, or was it just music was your savior, so to say?
It was more of a realization, for me, the way I conceptualize it is that I think about my feet, and my feet are touching the ground, and I think about the floor, and the floor is touching the ground. I think about that ground is touching everything around it, the trees, the animals, and all of that is touching everything on this planet. And I think about my skin is touching the air, and that's touching everything. Ultimately, I'm part of this universe that's existing, and that to me is the feeling of oneness, and the feeling of oneness of God, and that feeling of like, you think about the universe, and it really is one unit to me, and I think that is God is infinite unity. And we are just part of it, and we are it. There's no escaping that, whether you like it or not. That's what I think.
Thanks, Robbie, for
Yeah.
answering all our questions. We just followed our 3 buttons. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
We'll have budgets in 5 years.